Good evening and welcome to the Town of Avon Advisory Planning Commission meeting. If you are interested in having a copy of the agenda or the staff reports, they are available on the tables to the right of the audience. We will be conducting business as outlined on the agenda. From time to time, the board may deviate from the agenda. As president of this body, I will inform those in attendance of any deviations. This meeting is being recorded for the public record. Because of this, we request that personal conversations are kept to a minimum and all cell phones are set to vibrate with any phone calls taken outside of chambers. So you might want to turn your ringers off right now. If you are interested in commenting during the public hearing, please sign up on the sheets located on the tables to the right of the audience. When your name is called, please step forward to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Please address your comments to the board and not to staff or to the petitioner. Your comments should relate directly to the case at hand. Responses to public comments will be given once the hearing is closed. We do understand that there may be several persons who wish to speak. In order to keep the meeting running in a timely fashion, we would request that you not repeat previous comments. Thank you for your assistance in facilitating a respectful, fair, and timely meeting. Again, welcome, and please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, let's take a roll call.
Harold Heiser. Mason Pike. Absent. Dave Goffman.
Here.
Robert Pope.
Present.
Catherine Ransberg.
Here.
Paul Guckenberger. Absent. Greg Susan.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay. We now move on to the approval of meeting of the minutes from the previous meeting of June 27th. Has everyone present had an opportunity to review the meeting minutes from June 27th? And do we have any edits or corrections or questions?
I make a motion to approve as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, okay. We're now going to move on to the public comment portion of our meeting. This is an opportunity where the public may comment on items on the agenda that are not a public hearing or on a specific matter within the council's jurisdiction. Does anybody have any public comments other than what is already on the agenda that they'd like to make? If not, then we will close the public comment section. Do we have any requests for continuances or agenda modifications?
Yeah, we do have 3 requests for a continuance.
Okay,
The first item would be PUD 28202, which is a Cityscape Avon project near the intersection of Ronald Reagan Parkway and Veterans Drive. In this particular instance, the petitioner has requested a continuance to the next meeting, August 22nd, 2022. This is the first request for a continuance on that petition, and the staff has no objection to the continuance request. The second request for a continuance is ZA 2209 Glenrock Springs, and this is a rezoning request located at approximately 7650 Beechwood Center Road. The petitioner has requested another continuance on this one to the August 22nd, 2022 meeting. This is the second request for a continuance made by the petitioner. And then ZA 2211 Ziskin Pines. This is a request for approval of, I should go back to the planning and development. This is the second request for a continuance on the planning and development. I think it's the second request. The previous request was made by the town. Yeah, that's right. The previous request was made by the town. And now back to Ziskin Pines, ZA 2211. That is a rezoning of 20 acres from R1 to R4 to build patio residential housing and to continue the religious use of the property. at 6111 North County Road 800 East. In this particular case, the petitioner has requested a continuance to August 22nd, 2022, and this is the first request for a continuance on that. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Do you need to act on these individually, or can you do them collectively? If nobody has any questions, I'll make a motion that we continue PUD P 22-02 Cityscape Avon, ZA 2209 Glen Rock Springs, and ZA 22-11 Siskin Pines to August 22nd of 22.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. So now we are going to move on to old business, and we move to the first agenda item, which is Rise of Avon.
DPR 2116 Rise Avon LLC request for approval of development plan to build 20 buildings on 13.627 acres with a request for waivers of section 4-87B to allow the construction of the buildings without using masonry material on 60% of the front facade, 30% of the side facades, a waiver of section 24-12-4B to allow 0-foot roof overhang with a 3-foot roof overhang required, and waiver of note 2 of section 5-7 to provide for 117 parking spaces with a maximum number of parking spaces of 98 allowed. Properties located at approximately 1662 South County Road 1050 East, zoned I-2, and located in the Ronald Reagan Corridor Overlay District. This is the general location of the property. You guys have had this case before you in the 2 previous occasions. It was heard on March and May meetings. This has been reviewed by everybody, and it meets all the standards of the ordinance, with the exception of the 3 waivers that you're here to hear tonight. Again, the only issue that remains is compliance with those 3 architectural standards, those 3 waivers that are pending before you. The petitioner has submitted early this month revised elevations on the 7th building on the front on Ronald Reagan Parkway. That 7th building would mean that all 7 of the proposed buildings that are adjacent to or adjoining Ronald Reagan are consistent with the ordinance requirements as far as masonry. The 7 buildings, well, the 7th building doesn't usually utilize the storefront, but it has masonry on the facade that's facing Ronald Reagan in accordance with the requirements of the ordinance. The other 6 buildings have a storefront. You'll see, I'll show them up here. We do support the requested waiver requests for the architectural standards for the remaining 13 buildings. The requested waiver for the roof overhang would apply to all 20 buildings, and the requested waiver for parking. It's an interesting issue now, because if this were being reviewed under the current zoning UDO, that they wouldn't need that waiver because there is no maximum in the current UDO. But since this was filed under the old ordinance, it still it applies to the old ordinance, still applies, but we also support the requested waiver for the maximum parking. Here's the look of the elevations. These are a lot of these you saw last week or 2 months ago. And then this is the new one right here, showing the masonry on the sides and front and rear. Site plan showing that last building is this building that's located right here. The other 7 buildings, or the other 6 buildings that you saw with the storefronts, are right here. The remaining buildings all back here are the buildings that are going to be steel buildings. We do recommend approval of the requested waivers, and we recommend approval of the development plan subject to the 3 standard conditions that are outlined both up there in our staff report on file, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
So, as you mentioned, we've been here several times before, and do you feel like the petitioner has made an exerted effort to go ahead and meet the requirements that we've requested?
Yeah, I think that he has.
Is there anything well, never mind.
Okay.
Question that I have is, and I apologize because I wasn't part of any of those prior meetings. Are we providing them a road cut on Ronald Reagan, or is this the existing one that will tie into the property on the west side of Ronald Reagan?
It's a new cut. It's right in, right out only. It's a new driveway cut on Ronald Reagan, but
Is it
there's,
south or north end of that?
it would be on the northbound side of the road.
Does it need a road cut?
We're not cutting the median, so there's no way to do a left in, left out. It's only going to be a right in, right out.
Are there any further questions for staff?
Bill, correct me if I'm wrong. I understand, again, just like Greg, I haven't been here for the prior agreements made. My understanding, we've made headway on every waiver except for the facade, front facade, 60% of the front facade, 30% of the side facades.
We've made headway on all that waiver. Originally the staff supported the maximum parking waiver. We had concerns about the overhang and the masonry's waiver, because originally there was a few more buildings that didn't have the masonry in the front. The petitioner has then amended their proposal 2 times to redesign those buildings at front of Ronald Reagan so that they do meet the masonry standards of the ordinance.
It's your opinion, they meet that intent now, the
They do,
spirit of
yeah,
that
that's the
ordinance, the
idea.
intent from the Ronald Reagan overlay, from the view, that's the entire purpose, is the
From-
aesthetics.
To
and
make
where it can be
the
seen.
buildings look attractive as you go up and down the corridor.
Understood. Thank you.
With that comment, what about the people on 1050 that'll look at the other buildings?
They have, I believe that there's a fence, and there is a pretty extensive landscaping plan for the property that would break up even the facades both on 1050 and Ronald Reagan. There'll be some pretty extensive landscaping along that corridor that should break up the facades for those views.
And my last question is the additional parking space. If this is being created as flex space / storage facility, in my opinion, doesn't have a lot of parking needs.
It's a unique type of land use in which it does serve. So it's not like a typical industrial land use, but these are small businesses that could have customers come to them for one reason or another. Contractor uses. They could have a showroom for a contractor in the space and have customers there, which is the reason for the parking requirements are more than you would normally have for a pure industrial use. They're more, what they propose is similar to what you would have for a pure commercial use.
Thank you.
I have a question. Was it a change for the other 13 buildings? I thought previously they were doing the 30% masonry requirement. Was it a change for them to change to steel?
No, they never proposed to put any masonry at all in the 13 buildings behind the seven.
Okay, I couldn't remember.
On Ronald Reagan.
Thanks.
Any further questions for staff? If not, we'll open it up to public comment. Has anybody signed up to comment on this particular agenda item? I'm sorry. It's been a long day. Let's have the petitioner come forward.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
That's right, there's a laser pointer.
Awesome. Good afternoon. My name is Pat Rooney, here on behalf of Rise Avon LLC with respect to DPR 2116 for the 13.627 acre property located at 1622 South County Road 1050 East for request of waivers as further described by Mr. Peoples. I don't know if I can move that a little. These,
We need you to state your address, please.
1638 Shelby Street, Indianapolis, Indiana.
Thank you.
And these poster boards match the slides. So let's see if this, yes. So this first slide shows the original plans on the left-hand side where we were planning on meeting the facade requirements only on the fronts of the buildings on the parking lot. And the plan on the right shows all the buildings on Ronald Reagan outlined in blue. Since petitioners work with staff and based on the feedback from this board, in order to have all the buildings which front Ronald Reagan now meet the facade requirements. This next slide is a rendering showing the property from drivers going northbound on Ronald Reagan. And this next slide is a view of the property from across Ronald Reagan. The next slide is a rendering showing the view of the property from the parking lot. As you can see from each view, you will only see buildings which meet the facade requirements. The next couple slides are the various elevations of all the different sides of the buildings which front Ronald Reagan, and they show the buildings meet the facade requirements on the aforementioned sides and the need for the waiver on the overhangs due to the small gap between the garage doors and the roofs of each building. These next couple of slides are with respect to the landscaping. The first one is the overall landscaping plan. And the next one, let me go back. This next one shows the green belt and the residential frontage breakdowns. As you can see, there's residential screening, which includes 24 evergreens and 25 shrubs. And the frontage green belt includes 35 trees, 25 ornamentals, 43 evergreens, and 76 shrubs. As you can see from the overall numbers, in addition to the 1,086 new plantings, we are keeping 116 existing trees. So when Mr. Peoples mentioned the extensive landscaping, it's over and above anything we've done before and should provide plenty of screening from every direction. These next couple slides are about the general business for Rise and what we will provide to the Avon community. This first slide shows two quick examples of how Rise acts as an incubator for small businesses who start with 1 or 2 employees and grow exponentially when they are provided the proper setting. Based on our comparable sites, we are projecting to serve 148 businesses, which will employ 667 employees at the Avon location. This next slide is actually a video. I'm not sure the easiest way to play that.
When we visited the Rise in Castleton location, we noticed that they have more of an accelerator for businesses. They have a collaboration of the businesses within that use itself, a co-working space, some shared amenities, and really it was a small business startup opportunity. The building itself for Rise has a really great presence, I would say, from the street front perspective. And so it looks actually like an office building that you would see really anywhere in any suburban environment, actually. So I feel like that we've worked through the zoning process to be able to have the office uses be closer to the street and the rest of the warehousing be further in the back. They did do a really good job as well of, I would say, increasing architectural standards, and so paying attention to building materials, colors, fencing, landscaping. They did a really good job, I think, of working with us to collaborate in an end product that we could all be proud of. I would say RISE benefits the people of the businesses in respect to options, affordability, security, collaboration, and even the acceleration components of the co-working space that's offered. I feel like that's a benefit above and beyond what you would get from any standard office building that you would find. And so I feel like RISE goes above and beyond to help each individual business owner and the employees of the business to figure out what fits for them and what works and helps them grow. I'm thankful that RISE is here in Noblesville to share in our partnership and help grow and collaborate and attract and retain new businesses.
I would recommend anyone who is outgrowing their current space, if you're working out of your home or your basement or something like that, there's a very easy step that you can take to get a small unit. And then as your business grows, that possibility for growth is just built right in here. The RISE facility, geographically being where it is, the forklift and that capability of really becoming that small working warehouse growth capability, small barriers to entry, ability to go from being in my house all the way to a full commercial warehouse. And like that is something that you can't really find anywhere else. It's not something that you can find somebody who's willing to take a risk on this upstart who's only been around for 2 or 3 months. So I'm very thankful that there is a kind of growth incubator built into the structure of RISE, and that it's something that we were able to find and utilize. It all just worked out perfect.
As you can see from these testimonials, these waivers are necessary so that we can provide space at a price point affordable to these small businesses. We have worked very hard to do so while still providing aesthetically pleasing site, which meets most of the zoning and ordinance requirements and all of the requests from Mr. Peoples and this board. Based on the foregoing, we request approval of the waivers with respect to section 4-8.7B, 24-12.4B, and note 2 of section 15.7. And with that, if you let me know if you have any questions or concerns.
Well, I think you've heard us say before that almost everybody who has been presented with this idea has thought the concept was fantastic. And we like the idea of that being part of helping Avon grow in a smart way and to bring in the kind of small businesses and to help incubate small businesses here in Avon. So that's just wanted to reiterate that that's the base position I know we're coming from. Anybody else have questions for the petitioner before we open it up to public comment?
Can you go back to your landscaping package?
Yes.
Will that landscaping package obstruct the view of the egress ingress into the property?
I mean, we meet all the setback requirements, so I wouldn't think so. And we've worked with landscape architects to have the plantings so that they would not. So I would say no.
And then on the backside on that 1050, that's all that landscaping build you were talking about, the berming and stuff?
You can see there's basically one structure that backs up to 1050. The long axis, it's going to be broken up pretty good by both existing and proposed landscaping.
So with this landscaping, will people be able to even see these buildings?
They'll probably be able to see them, especially during fall.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll probably be able to see them, especially during fall and winter. I think they're mostly deciduous trees, so they'll lose their leaves come fall.
But we did add several evergreens based on the feedback at the last hearing.
I have no questions.
Any further questions for the petitioner or comments? Okay, we'll now open it up to, now we will open it up to public comment.
So I've got 3 of the petitioners here, and then next one would be Jim Hutchek.
Okay. We would remind anybody who wants to make a comment to state your name, make sure that microphone is on, state your name and your address.
James Hutchek, 2342 Fisher Avenue, Speedway, Indiana, 46224. We are one of the people selling part of our property. There's actually multiple people selling pieces of property for this project, believe it or not. I know there's some concern about 1050 East. 2 petitioners have sold part of their property and have endorsed the project. A third has endorsed the project as well over the last several meetings, and they're all backing up to this property. There, to my knowledge, have been no complaints about this property and any of these meetings that we've had here. As a small business owner, I was excited when they came to us with this possibility. I wish we would have had it when we were growing our businesses, because unless you've owned a small business, you have no idea how hard it is to find property, to find a building. I mean, most of them are built for shopping centers. And most of these companies, like even our company, can't go into a shopping center. The zoning's wrong, the sizing's wrong. They don't want your kind of business. They want retail, they want a dress shop, they want something like that. To find space to run a Mosquito Joe's and to store your stuff, to find space to run a small construction company to store your stuff and have a place that you can have a small office so it's not in your garage. It's almost impossible to find these days. And they're right. When they say that most businesses don't go far, I can tell you that all my businesses didn't move more than 3 miles from our original spot. So once you do start, once you do establish, you try not to go very far, because that's where you're established. That's where your employees are coming from. So you don't want to make them drive any further either, especially now with gas being a little bit higher than it should be. But, you know, 148, you know, places to put businesses. And this is not for your average Joe to go and rent a spot. This is not a warehouse for that. This is not a storage unit. This is a business support center. Everything that they had showed me showed it was a business support center. I wish we could have had a free forklift to use. I wish we could have had the amenities they had when we started up. And I really feel this is a great positive move for Avon, no matter what. I feel that this is the right spot for it. It gives it great access to all the areas of Avon, Plainfield. And I really hope that you guys can find it to support it and to help Avon grow as far as businesses and become more of a business-friendly environment. Thank you.
Has anybody else signed up to speak on this agenda item? Is there anybody who did not sign up to speak on this agenda item who would like to do so now?
Bob Culler, 1483 Laurel Oak Avenue, Avon, Indiana, representing Coalition for Responsible Growth in Avon. As a group, we feel that in regarding criteria 3, the property, the use of the land, we feel that this is appropriate use for this particular site, and encourage approval of the building based on the agreements that have been worked on for the last, oh goodness, year or whatever it has been to get this up and going. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak on this agenda item who did not sign up to do so? There being no further speakers, I'm closing public comment for this agenda item. Conversations and discussion.
Again, haven't been here for the whole fight on this one, but I believe Mr. People said, and I think I agree, the spirit of the ordinances, that this project is meeting the intent and spirit of those ordinances. And as we've heard from a couple comments, and I believe Mr. Taylor is here, Economic Development Director, to speak to it, this would be very beneficial for the community, for our tax base, meeting the spirit and the intention. I think this is a great addition for the community.
Having been here for, I think, all the meetings for the last 3 or 4 months on this, and hearing all the reviews we've heard from the public, I think this is far and away the highest and best use of this tract.
I appreciate the petitioner continuing to work with the town staff to come up with a solution that aligns with what everyone thinks is acceptable, so.
I feel the same way. I'm happy that the petitioner has continued to work with staff to make sure that our goals align with their goals. I think from the first time this agenda item was presented, everyone was excited about the concept. I'm a small business owner myself, and I don't need a forklift, but I can understand the need for that. Mr. Zusen, do you have any thoughts?
I have no comments.
Okay,
Are you willing to entertain a motion?
I am willing to entertain a motion.
Then I would move we approve the waiver of section 4-8.7.b to allow the construction of buildings without using masonry material on 60% of the front facade and 30% of the side facades. We need to do these individually, correct, Dan? Gotcha.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Harold Heiser,
4.
Mason Pipe, no, not here. Dave Kaufman,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Catherine Ransberg,
4,
Greg Zuzen,
4.
motion carries.
okay. Do we have any other comment, any other discussion on the second waiver request with regards to the roof overhang?
I'll make a motion as well. I move we approve the waiver of section 24-12.4.b, the zoning ordinance to allow a 0-foot roof overhang.
Do you have a second?
I'll second it.
Harold Heiser,
4.
Dave Kaufman,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Catherine Ransberg,
4.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
motion carries.
And we have the third waiver request. Do we have any further discussion, or are we going to entertain a motion?
I move we approve the waiver note 2 of section 15-7 to provide a total of 117 parking spaces. That's 117.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Harold Heiser,
4.
Dave Kaufman,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Catherine Ransberg,
4,
Greg Zuzen,
4.
motion carries.
and I believe we are done with this agenda item.
We need to,
We need to approve the DPR, correct?
Yes, we do need to approve.
In that case, I move that we approve DPR 21-16 Rise Avon LLC, subject to the following conditions. Any revised plans must comply with all commitments and condition noted as part of any approval granted. Number 2, a landscape bond is required per section 4-9 of the zoning ordinance, and this bond must be provided to the town of Avon prior to issuance of a full certificate of occupancy for the subject site. Number 3, the development shall comply with all relevant portions of town code and comments by Public Works, Fire Department, Crossroads Engineers at the pre-construction meeting.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Harold Heiser,
4.
Dave Kaufman,
4.
Robert Pope,
4.
Catherine Ransberg,
4.
Greg Zuzen,
4.
motion carries.
And now we are done with this agenda item. So, very good. Took us a while, but we got there. Thank you for your working with us on that. Okay, we now move on to new business, Mr. Peoples.
That'll be me.
Or maybe it's Ian.
Next up, new business, we have DPR 2213. That's for the Andy Moore Kia expansion. This is a request for approval of a development plan to allow for the construction of an approximately 11,400 square foot addition to the Andy Moore Kia to be used for building for parts and storage and auto service. In addition, there is a waiver on file of Avon UDO section 23.18.2D, building materials, to allow for an expansion that does not feature two different colors on the building exterior. Some history on the lot. There's some extensive history. The most important history being that the dealership itself was developed under DPR 1602. And with that DPR were 10 variances of development standards. I'll save my breath and not read them all. You can see them here on the screen and included in your staff report for front setback, pedestrian walkways, etc. This is located at 8789 East US Highway 36. It's on the south side across from Harvest Landing Commercial Subdivision. It's the Avon Automotive Park. And here we have a picture of the site. As I mentioned, there's a request for approval of a development plan to allow for an 11,400 square foot addition. The addition is to be used for part storage and auto service. This addition equates to 43% of the original building's area, and it therefore requires approval by you per the UDO. Pictured here is the proposed addition. You can see it comes off of the south side of the building there. And in addition, here's the proposed landscape plan. The landscape just being around the foundation of the building. And you will notice there is some missing terminal islands here on the foundation plan or on the landscaping plan that you'll see here. It's a little small, but we'll touch on that. So staff finds that the revised plans comply with the requirements of the UDO, except for those aspects for which there was a variance of development standards that had been approved. And then, as I mentioned, the proposed terminal islands do not depict the necessary landscaping because they were, I assume, inadvertently left off of the landscape plan. So we've added a condition which requires those terminal islands to be landscaped as required by ordinance. And it will ensure that's done at the final inspection stage. And the last aspect that does not meet the requirements of the UDO is that for which there is a waiver filed, and that's the proposed deviation from the ordinance to not require two different colors on the addition. To touch on the waiver, it is of section 2.10.02D. The intent of that provision, staff finds to be to provide for the development of an aesthetically pleasing building and to maintain coordinated development within the 36 corridor. In this instance, we find that the waiver would allow the addition to be developed in a manner consistent with the existing building, which likely did not require two different colors at the time of its original development. So at this time, on the sides and the rear of the building, there are not two colors. There is a single gray tone, and this proposal would maintain that throughout this addition. Here is the elevations provided to staff. They're not colored, but the addition aspect here is all gray, so we didn't find it necessary to show the color. Here is the rest of the addition here. Staff recommends approval of the waiver request, and we recommend approval of the development plan, subject to the following conditions. Any revised plan must comply with all commitments and conditions noted as part of any approval granted. A landscape bond is required per section 4-9 of the zoning ordinance. This bond is to be provided to the town of Avon prior to the issuance of a full certificate of occupancy for the subject site. The development shall comply with all relevant portions of the town code and comments by Public Works, the fire department, and Crossroad engineers at the pre-construction meeting. And then lastly is that condition we added. Landscaping shall be provided within the proposed terminal islands as required by section 6.7B of the Unified Development Ordinance. And with that, I'm available for questions.
If we weren't to grant this waiver, and I can't believe that, I find it hard to believe that Andy Moore wouldn't continue on and build this and put two colors on it. Is there any way that we could go back and require them to put two colors on the already existing building?
So there's not a way to require it. You can ask that of the petitioner, but we can't require anything that,
Yeah, we cannot. And the unique thing that happens on this case and the next case, and I was here for that, those originals, is that the automotive dealers are under certain restrictions by the manufacturers about what their buildings can look like and what the color palettes can be. And just like all franchisees, if you think about it, they're kind of dictated to about what their buildings have to look like. And both of these buildings were very unique kind of designs at the time, steel and glass and kind of white with the names, very unique design. And so that's what we ran into. So that one color approach was approved for the construction of this building and the next one you're going to see. So it does present a unique situation. The Plan Commission approved those on the original buildings years ago with the understanding that there was little Andy Moore could do, with the what these buildings are supposed to look like and comply with their agreements with the automotive manufacturers.
So let me take it a step further. Then it would look a little silly. It would not look aesthetically pleasing. Let me put it that way. To have a giant portion of this building be required to have multiple colors, and the original portion of this building be still a single color. And since we can't force that, that's about the situation it would be.
It is, and it goes to the issue Ian mentioned in his staff report about coordination of appearance. That's really where we get to. We do want the extension or addition of the building to look like it belongs.
As one
And
building.
so to me, the die was kind of cast when the original buildings were built as to what any extension would look like.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Not to mention creating potential problems with the Kia ownership.
Well, this is his campus anyhow, I'll call it that. My only question is the neighboring dealerships, and I went by there myself, and Skillman is one color. And Hair Honda has a blue tint to it, but other than that, it matches what's already there. That was my question. It's going to be the same color that's there. It's going to be the same architectural standard that's there. And it's in the back of the building, which faces Kingston Street versus facing 36. That's all I have.
Any further questions for staff?
I have no question.
Okay, would like the petitioner to come forward.
Well, good evening. I'm Jerry Kittle. I'm a civil engineer and land surveyor on the project. Our address is 3961 Perry Boulevard, Whitestown, Indiana, and I'm with Innovative Engineering. Tonight, I'm here representing the Andy Moore Automotive Group, and I guess Dan's already taken most of my thunder here tonight. I actually did this overall automotive park years ago, so I've been there from the beginning with the town of Avon and going through this. It is a 5.23 acre site. We are zone C2. We are in the overlay, but this is exactly it with the automotive industry changing. It's this design to allow further service bays is the whole intent for not only this project, but the next project that you're going to see tonight. So we're adding 11,400 square feet to the building. That's 14 service bays. It is strictly that. We're not changing the showroom. So everything you see from Rockville Road, US 36, going to look identical. So this will be consistent, the same color, the same paint match, the same texture on the building. Everything's going to be consistent. So when you get done, you really won't see phase one, phase two. This is extension in the rear towards Kingston. And if we missed that, I apologize for the oversight on the islands. Those will be landscaped. We certainly appreciate that. Landscaping and lighting will be the same. There are some lights that we're going to revise, but we have submitted those revisions to the plan and those have been accepted. We have the letter from Crossroads in our file saying that we have met all the requirements of the ordinance. And as Dan has so graciously already discussed, the automotive industry with franchise, they really get detailed on what we can and cannot do, right down to the color of the binders and the holders inside the automotive business. So it's all very controlled by the franchise. You have to use their color, their paint, their casework inside these buildings. Everything is controlled by them. You know, we would like to have some variations, but we're actually tied as Andy Automotive or Avon Automotive Group. So that's the reason for the request of the waiver. With that, I will ask if you have any questions. It's something that I missed. So thank you.
So this expansion would be strictly for service and maintenance issues. It's not
That
an
is
expansion
correct.
of the showroom.
It is no expansion of the showroom. Customer base probably will not change. It is strictly just to add lifts. With the way the automotive industry is right now, we're just having to keep those automobiles in service longer.
And you've seen a demand in the increase for, I mean, are people just not selling their cars like they used
They
to?
are not. They are not. You know, all you just take a drive around and see how many new cars, new trucks are available on lots. It's very difficult to get anything right now. Hopefully that will change in the future, but right now that's what we're dealing with.
The egress and ingress on this will flow to, I don't know if it's the name of a road, but it's the roadway between the Kia and the Volkswagen dealerships, correct?
It will. Those roadways will stay exactly the same. You do have access off of Kingston Street. Years ago, we were the actual ones that came up with the idea to put inventory lot on the south side of Kingston Street so that we did not have semis, car carriers, you know, working in the same area or delivering cars in the same area as automotive customer base. So that was the reason for that concept. So the customers do take the or once you pull in and go through customer write-up, the employees of the dealership take care of the car and they will deliver the car back to the customer in the front of the store. So there will be very little customer traffic in the rear around this service area.
Do you anticipate hiring more employees as a result of this expansion?
I'm sure he will hire some for service tech. I don't have a number for whether it's 2 or 3, but there will be some.
Any further questions for the petitioner? Okay, we will open it up to public comment. Has anybody signed up to comment on this agenda item? Is there anybody here who would like to comment on this agenda item? If not, then I will close public comment for this agenda item. Discussion.
I apologize. I have a question, I think, for Dan. The petitioner made a statement that they would continue that architecture standards, the color, et cetera. Do we need to include that verbiage, that language in as a commitment? I don't think we can do a commitment. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. Do we need to require some kind of verbiage in here to ensure that there's no change in plans after we approve the waiver?
One common condition is that the construction will be proposed as presented at the meeting.
Okay.
And that is a common condition which would capture, I think, where you're getting at.
I guess I do also have a question for Dan. So are these waivers, let's say Andy Moore decides that they want to move out of Avon, which we hope never happens, and decides they want to set up shop in Arkansas or whatever. And those buildings are now available for a new car dealership. does that break the waivers travel with the property, correct?
Yeah, it's for the development plan. You're dealing with the development plan. So
Okay.
it's just about the construction of the building. If they leave, the building stays.
Right, right. Okay,
It's a conforming, it would be built in conformance with your ordinance, with your waiver, it wouldn't change. You know, it's not
in REM type of thing. Okay,
correct, not like a special exception might be, for example.
that's what I was trying to clarify. So, okay,
They leave, building stays.
gotcha. Okay. Any further conversation or discussion about this agenda item? I will entertain a motion.
I move we approve waiver of section 2.1002D to require a single color with the condition that construction, pardon me, I'll do that on the DPR. Motion to move to approve a waiver of section 2.1002D to require a single color.
Is there a second?
Second.
Harold Iser,
For.
Dave Kaufman,
Or
Robert Pope,
4.
Catherine Ranzer,
4.
Greg Zuzen.
4.
Now to the DPR, right? I move that we approve DPR 22-13 Andy Moore Kia expansion, a DPR to allow for the construction approximately 11,400 square foot addition to the Andy Moore Kia building, subject to the following conditions. Any revised plans must comply with all commitments and condition noted as part of any approval granted. A landscape bond is required per section 4-9 of the zoning ordinance. This bond must be provided to the town of Avon prior to the issuance of a full COA for the subject site. Number 3, the development shall comply with all relevant portions of town code and comments by Public Works, the fire department, cross-range engineers at the pre-construction meeting. Number 4, landscaping shall be provided within the proposed terminal islands as required by section 6.7B of the UDO. And number 5, construction be completed as presented.
Second.
Harold Iser,
4.
Dave Kaufman, Robert Pope,
4.
Catherine Ranzer,
4.
Greg Zuzen.
4.
Motion carries.
And we move on to our next agenda item, which is DPR 2214.
DPR 2214, Andy Moore Volkswagen expansion, request for approval of development plan to construct a 7,520 square foot building expansion for parts storage and automobile service with a waiver of Avon UDO section 2318-2D, building materials to allow the expansion that does not feature 2 different colors on the building. Exterior property is located approximately at 8791 US Highway 36, and it is a zone C2 and located within the US Highway 36 overlay district. As with the previous petition, this petition has a significant number of variances. It should be noted that a number, back in 2015, when these were done, it appears as though the petitioners were required to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals to get variances for things that on a modern development plan you would see as a waiver. And my guess is what happened is the Plan Commission wanted the control of that rather than to cede it to the Board of Zoning Appeals and then be forced to approve a development they didn't particularly care for at some later date. In any case, a lot of the standards on these variances are waivers of the way we administer the ordinance now. And my guess is that somewhere between 2015 and now, the ordinance was changed to allow the Plan Commission to waive some of the standards in the ordinance. This is the location exactly right next door to the one that you just seen. And again, this is a ordinance, or this is a request for a 7,520 square foot addition. This addition equates to about 38% of the existing building. And there's an interesting thing in the ordinance which allows an expansion on a building up to 35%. That could be administratively approved. And we've had several additions put on buildings on the US 36 corridor that have been administratively approved. Additionally, the ordinance also allows you, if you don't exceed 35%, not to comply with the 36 overlay. So because this particular petition is 3% over that threshold, they have to, one, come to you and comply with the 36 overlay. Otherwise, if they would have, took a few hundred square foot off of it, they probably could have got by with this administratively. This is the building location right here. A little addition on the south side of the building, again, for auto service and parts storage. Should have a mezzanine in it. Landscaping plan shows, it actually increases the landscaping a little in this plan as opposed to what was previously approved, just because what was originally approved, this came straight across. So now you've got an additional layer of foundation landscaping on this side and this side. The one removal would have been a modification of this island down here because they have to move the dumpster location from where it is to that location, that place. Again, the revised plans have been reviewed by the staff, comply with the requirements of the Unified Development Ordinance, with the exception of those things that a variance of development standards has been approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals in 2015, and the two colors, which you've heard in the previous petition. As you're well aware, the existing building of Volkswagen is white. And this particular request would simply carry on the texture, carry on the color of the existing building onto this small addition on the south side of the building. While the request is not consistent with the ordinance requirements, it would be consistent with the existing color scheme of that existing building. And that standard, whether it was in place or not, because that standard wasn't in one of the variances back in 2015. So my guess is, and I didn't do the research, I probably should have, but I'm guessing that standard didn't exist back then either. And otherwise, they would have requested a variance for it because they requested a variance for all the other standards that they needed back then. So we do. This shows the general layout of the new buildings with the additions on them. We do recommend approval of the waiver request. We do recommend approval of DPR 2214, subject to the 3 standard conditions that are outlined in our staff report and located on the slide in front of you. And I would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
I think
So, a
the
simple-
questions for the previous presentation will probably be the same here.
Oh, yeah. It's identical. I mean, the request is identical to the previous petition.
With that being said, on page 3, there's the waiver of section 2.1002D, which requires building articulation. That is not correct.
That is not correct. I've obviously failed to correct. As you probably are aware, we cut and paste staff reports all the time. We try to, and we obviously forgot to change one element of the staff report.
I get bonus points for reading it. That's all I have.
You was just seeing if you're paying attention.
Bill, I noticed, on this sample motion, the conditions, there are some differences here. This one for the Volkswagen expansion doesn't include the landscaping be provided within the proposed terminal islands. Is there a difference? Is this my misunderstanding of terminal islands?
The landscape plan they submitted for this does the landscaping that's required by the ordinance. Ian discovered the 2 landscape islands in the previous petition that weren't landscaping when he did his review. But when I did my review, all the landscaping that's required by the ordinance, and of course, we reviewed it only from the standpoint of the disturbed area of the development plan. We confirmed that the site is consistent with the landscaping plan that was approved in 2015. And then we only reviewed the small portion, the foundation landscaping and the changes to the parking lot landscaping for this.
You're just taking into consideration that delta.
Right, just where it changed. That's where we reviewed. We didn't review the entire site. The entire site, we reviewed it from the old landscape plan, and it appeared as though the landscaping was installed in accordance with that plan. Where it's changed, that change is consistent with the ordinance requirements.
Thank you.
Any further questions for staff? If not, we'll ask the petitioner to come forward again.
Well, thank you again. I'm Jerry Kittle, address 3961 Perry Boulevard in Whitestown, Indiana, 46075. I'm the owner of Innovative Engineering. I'm here tonight again representing Anymore Automotive Group as we look to do an expansion, same as last case. We're adding service bays, 8 service bays in this particular case, to the Volkswagen store. I will just take a minute to say that our plans do and refer to the exact same color and palette and texture on the walls, same construction materials of what's in phase 1, it'll be in phase 2. This project and the last project that you just heard, that is on those drawings, and staff has reviewed those, so they are within your requirement. Again, landscaping meets your ordinance. Lighting, there's a few changes just because of the addition, but the lighting has been reviewed and submitted and within your ordinance. We have received a letter again from Crossroads Engineers stating that they have reviewed our stormwater drainage and it's within the ordinance and the guidelines. And with that, I'll open up for any questions. I will tell you that both of these sites will probably go under construction at the same time. It's just a matter of trying to use one trade to do the expansion on one building and then moving over to the next building. So we do have plans to basically secure and fence off the south portions of these stores during constructions, but you'll see construction happening simultaneously out there on the site. So
When do you anticipate construction beginning on that?
we'd like to start sometime in August. So we'd like to get these buildings up and under roof this year. There is demand for that service center, and so as quick as we can get those buildings up and under roof and secure and get, we're like everyone else having trouble with materials and product and labor force. So we already have the project bid. It's already been awarded to a contractor. It will actually be the same contractor that built both of these buildings. So it's just continuing on their service. This was actually a concept back even in 2015, 2016, that someday we might need to add these service bays. Even then, not knowing what the future was going to hold, but we anticipated this might be something we'd need to do at some point.
Well, you did answer the question that I was going to talk to you about, was materials, are they available? And is the material that you had in the original building built, is it made today? Is that available?
Yes, it is. And as a part of this, whether it's Kia or whether it's Volkswagen, before a C of O, obviously the town of Avon has to grant a C of O to meet all the inspection and all the requirements for the town and the materials. But each company, whether it's Kia or Volkswagen, will have their representative come through to make sure everything meets the requirements before the project can even open up as a business to serve them. So it's very well scrutinized.
You sound like you've had experience finding difficulty getting new tiles to replace old ones. We've all ran into that one. Sorry.
Some inside baseball going on here.
Yeah.
Any further questions for the petitioner? Since you brought it up, is there any anticipation that there may be in the future even further expansion on that lot?
Probably not at this point in time. This really takes us, kind of maximizes the lot. We definitely want to leave enough parking spaces in the rear for inventory of service vehicles and et cetera. So this is probably all we will do. who knows what'll happen at future plans, but it'll probably be another location at some point from here.
Okay. If there's no further questions for the petitioner, we will go ahead and open it up to public comment. Has anybody signed up to speak? Is there anybody who has not signed up who would like to speak on this agenda item? Nobody having coming forward, we will close public comments for this agenda item and move on to discussion. I don't know that there's much to discuss because it's
Pretty straightforward.
identical to the previous, I'm glad to know that people are getting their cars fixed. That's a good thing.
I make a motion to approve waiver of section 2.1002D, which requires a minimum of 2 different colors on building exteriors. My only question is, within the packet, do we need to amend this document within the packet or not? Where you said the building, right, where you said the building articulation. Okay, that's my motion.
I'll second.
Let's take a vote.
Harold Heiser. Dave Kaufman.
4.
Robert Pope.
4.
Catherine Ransberg.
4,
Greg Zuzen.
4.
Motion carries.
motion carries. Okay. We're going through the agenda here.
DPR now.
Oh, God.
I make a motion that we approve DPR 22-14 Andy Moore Volkswagen expansion DPR to allow for the construction of approximately 7520 square foot addition to the Andy Moore Kia building, Andy Moore Volkswagen building, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, any revised plans must comply with all commitments and conditions noted as part of any approval granted. Number 2, a landscape bond is required per section 4-9 of the zoning ordinance. This bond must be provided to the town of Avon prior to the issuance of a full COA for the subject site. Number 3, the development shall comply with all relevant portions of town code and comments by Public Works, the fire department, and Crossroads engineers at the pre-construction meeting. And number 4, construction be completed as presented.
Do we have a second? Okay.
Harold Heiser. Dave Kaufman.
4.
Robert Pope.
4.
Catherine Ransberg.
4,
Greg Zuzen.
4.
Motion carries.
okay.
Now we're moving right along.
Now, we can move on to ZA 2210.
ZA 2210 Avon Dental Center. This is a request for approval of a zone map amendment rezoning 3.49 acres from I2 to C2 for the construction of a dental clinic. This is a 3.49 acre property located at approximately 8107 Kingston Street. History of this, and I bring this up, this is a site plan review petition that was done in 2001 on Lot 16B of this Avon Commerce Park. This is the site that is immediately to the east of this particular site. It just comes into play because as part of this site plan, there was improvements done to this property. Here's the location of the site tucked in down here in the corner. This is Lowe's, I believe, right over here. And then you've got a multi-tenant retail, 2 multi-tenant retail centers right in here. 2017 future land use plan really doesn't have a overt land use recommendation for this property. What we have historically done in this particular instance is that we've either taken the underlying zoning as the appropriate land use category, or if we had a land use classification within a reasonable proximity to this site, we extended that land use classification to this site. In this particular case, the underlying zoning is I2. However, that's the request is changing that from I2 to C2. But about 900 feet to the east of this property, the plan does recommend area retail, and that area retail recommendation would be consistent with the requested C2 zoning district. There's another thing to take into consideration. The land use pattern in the general vicinity of this property is sort of eclectic. It's this mix. As I've told you, there's a multi-tenant center immediately to the east. That's largely retail and a religious use, I believe. And then if you go up and down Kingston Street, you'll find this sort of mix of retail, service uses, and retail uses, all sort of in different buildings along Kingston Street. So you don't have on this particular area a dominant land use, but you have sort of a mix of different land uses in the area. And this shows you the comprehensive plan recommendation and shows you the area retail, which is right here, and the location of this site, which is right here, showing about 900 feet away from an area retail recommendation. And here comes the curveballs in this particular petition. 2001, the multi-tenant retail center that adjoins this site to the east was constructed, and part of that construction included the construction of about 31 parking spaces on the property that is subject to the rezoning tonight. And there was a dedication of an easement to perpetuate the encroachment of those parking spaces on this site. I bring that up because this came into we did the research on this, frankly, when there was a remodeling of that adjoining land use for the religious use, because we were unsure of whether the religious use had adequate parking. Religious uses have significantly more parking that's required from them in many cases than even a retail land use in the same area. And we did find that as long as they retain those 31 parking spaces on this piece of property in some way, that they'll have adequate parking spaces for the religious use in that site. There's also a lift station on the southern portion of the property. So all we're saying about these is that subsequent development of the plan, and this is all, inside the Beltway stuff that we'll deal with during the DPR process, but subsequent development of the plan approval for the construction of the clinic on this property will have to accommodate these two encroachments on the property as well. This shows the site from an aerial view. This is the 31 parking spaces that are located on this property. This is the lift station back here that we talked about previously. We do recommend that the Plan Commission forward a favorable recommendation of this petition to the town council for final action. We do that, and I want to say this is a condition, not a commitment. We're not asking that this be recorded, but it's the development of the property will need to take into consideration the 31 parking spaces devoted for the adjoining land use and the location of the lift station on the property. And the reason we make it a commitment is because, or a condition rather than a commitment, because there's no real need to record this one. We'll confirm this particular development or this condition during the DPR process, and then it'll be done. There's no reason for it to last in perpetuity past the DPR process. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Can you go back to your picture? Because those are my two questions I had. Was the parking. So the parking is on the adjacent property there.
This line of 31 parking spaces right here is on this property right here.
So the existing asphalted parking is on for this property?
Yeah, and that was part of the development plan review that was done in 2001. And an easement was dedicated at that time to perpetuate that agreement between these two properties. I think.
So is the easement then east of the parking spots?
The easement is
Or where the
on
parking spots are, right,
Yeah, there's an
okay.
easement on this site for these parking spots right here.
This came up when we had the church was a petitioner like a month ago. Sorry.
It was the Bubba's 33. The Bubba's 33 did something similar in that they did not have sufficient park. They did not provide sufficient parking on site, but the adjoining lot 7 in Harvest Landing did have excess parking. And so they entered into an easement with that property owner to provide for shared parking among those two land uses.
But didn't we also have, isn't there a church in that building right next door?
There is a
two
church in
doors
this
down?
building right here, yeah.
Yeah, and we had that in front of us last year, correct?
Because
Because I remember this issue about the parking spaces and the easement and everything on that.
For the special exception for the church.
It's a
center.
special
That what it was.
exception.
Okay, so it was a Board of
Okay.
Zoning Appeals petition. All right, that's where it came up. Because
Oh,
I knew that the church, I knew we were dealing with a building permit issue with the church. I didn't realize that, or I didn't remember that we'd actually gone to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a special exception.
Right, okay.
But yeah, that line of parking came up during our research for
Right.
the church occupying this property.
Okay.
And you probably answered it right. I just want to clarify. In the existing building that's there, they have their own easement to get to their building, no matter what happens.
The lift station,
No, the building where the Nolan Security is, the RBI right there.
this one right here?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Okay. Thing
other
other
than
than
the-
the station.
yeah, other than the 31 parking spaces, everything is on their property.
Okay. The gravel road, as you can see, comes off and comes down to the lift station. Is that going to be maintained then, or?
Well, we don't have a
That's the only way it
conception.
can get there, right?
Yeah, that's the only way they can get there. I mean, there's likely, I didn't do any research. There's likely an easement for that as well.
You probably know, right?
Yeah,
We'll save that question for the
I was gonna
petitioner.
say, I presume the petitioner knows all about that.
There any further questions for staff?
I'm gonna ask you one there, Dan, just make sure we backstop this. This is a zoning amendment, so we really need to make sure we're sticking to those 5 criteria for this one.
That's right, it's rezoned.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay, if there's no further questions from the commission, we'll ask the petitioner to come forward.
Hello, good evening. I'm Ben Comer, 71 West Marion Street, Danville, Indiana, 46122, representing your petitioner, Avon Dental Center, Inc. We represent the petitioner, and thank you very much for the staff report, the analysis, and the favorable recommendation. They do such a good job that it leaves very little for us to have to explain to you. It's pretty cut and dry application tonight. It's zoned property in this subdivision is zoned I2. The proposed use does not fit in I2. It fits in C2, and we've asked for that zoning change. There's C2 to the immediate west. As explained by the staff, this particular area is a mix of a lot of different things, even though there's zoned I2, there's a lot of quasi retail uses and office uses in this subdivision. So you go business to business in this area and you wouldn't know what the zoning was. You would think it was a commercial zoning, but it's not, it's industrial. And a lot of that is just because there's been so many special exceptions and use variances granted through the years. Anyway, this particular subdivision tract, this lot was created in 2005, so it's been sitting around for 17 years. This is a great opportunity to put it to use for your tax revenue for the town. And eventually, we hope to come back to you with a development plan that will address and incorporate the parking that's in place on this lot right now for the benefit of the building to the east, and it will incorporate the access rights to get back to the lift station. So we find that the condition of approval that we recognize and work in these 2 items is appropriate, and we will have to do so. We'll be legally obligated to due to easement rights and what have you, and you'll have another look at it at that point in time. So with all that said, with the staff recommending approval, we would ask for your favorable recommendation to the council. We thank you.
Questions for the petitioner?
Just for clarification, McCool Flooring and Avon Orthodontics, are those the 2 existing C2?
I don't even know if they're zone C2.
Oh, they're,
And that's what I mean. You would think that they were.
right.
Right.
Well, who's the 900 feet away? That's C2.
It'd be across,
That's the comp plan recommendation.
Oh,
it's
okay.
Lowe's.
Okay. And then, because of your experience, Ben, with the title company, do you recommend or not, or agree with Mr. Peoples not to record this parking agreement and not to record the sewer agreement?
Oh,
Just to
I'm
put
sure
it
they
on
already
record.
are recorded.
Okay, if they are recorded, fine. If they're not recorded, then I would say get them recorded.
That will be fine, and that's something for the DPR, meaning that if I'm 99.9% sure the parking easement is in place.
Okay.
The lift station dates back a little bit farther than that. And if there's not rights recorded now, I know that the town and the plan commission is going to make us address that at the DPR to make sure that they do have access rights to get back to the lift station.
Thank you.
Is Avon Dental Center, is this part of is this just a privately owned business? Is this part of a franchise?
As far as I know, it's not a franchise, as far as I know. And it's a single tenant use building.
Okay.
Are they relocating?
I
They're
believe so.
currently
They're
over
in
by
Avon
Beechwood
already.
Farms, right?
That is correct.
Right.
Okay. Any further questions for the petitioner? Okay, we'll take public comment. Has anybody signed up for public comment on this agenda item?
No one signed up.
Okay, is there anybody present who'd like to speak to this agenda item? No one having stepped forward, we are closing public comment for this particular agenda item and move on to discussion.
The only concern I have is comp plan. It doesn't strictly meet the definition. However, considering what number two, the characters, the criteria number two, pardon me, it's consistent with the surrounding character. I don't think we're plopping single family in the middle of an industrial. It seems the comp plan is flexible in these types of situations, and I feel like it meets that. Again, we've got a orthodontics facility right across the street, so definitely consistent with use. And as Mr. Comer said, it has been vacant for quite some time, and commercial light industrial seems like the most desirable use for that area. So given those, it makes sense to me, makes sense for the zoning amendment, zoning approval.
I think it's a good fit for the property as well. Again, considering that what it is surrounded by and the mishmash of various zoning approvals, some of which I'm sure some of which go back quite a few years. It makes sense. I mean, they're not asking to put in a pig farm. So.
Or Simmental. I remembered it this time. I remembered it.
Any further discussion? If not, did you want to say something, Dave?
No, I was going to make the motion.
Oh, I was going to say, let's entertain a motion.
I move that we forward a favorable recommendation of ZA 22-10 Avon Dental Center, a request for a zoning map amendment to rezone from I2 to C2 to allow for the construction of a dental clinic, subject to the following conditions. Development of the property will need to take into consideration the 31 parking spaces devoted to the adjoining land use and the location of the lift station on the property.
I'll second.
Let's take a vote.
My only question is, go back to your summary, Bill, if you would, please. You added 2 other items onto that.
Right there?
Not that one. Wasn't there something after that?
No.
I swore I saw it. Right there, that summary. Those 2 bullet points, do those need to be added or not?
I think those are done.
They're incorporated into the one condition
Okay.
right
Yeah.
here.
That's fine. Okay.
Let's take a vote.
Harold Heiser. Dave Kaufman.
4.
Robert Pope.
4.
Catherine Ransford.
4.
Greg Souza.
4.
Motion carries.
Okay. Nothing further for this agenda item? Then we will move on to other business.
Well, there are 2 items of other business. One of them is we normally have a session of training. And I think that the plan commission turnover has been such that we probably need to hold a training session. We normally try to do this during the regular meeting. It's just that the plan commission's meeting have been so filled with stuff that we haven't, it wasn't fair to have you all sit for 3 hours or 4 hours during a meeting and then try to jam in 30 minutes of training on the back end.
Is that the Cliff Notes version, 3 hours?
So what we have proposed here is a discussion for holding a special meeting at some point in the near future, so that our attorney and I could get together and provide training to the plan commission. You do have 4 items on the agenda for the August meeting, for your regular meeting. There was only 1 item until after we've gotten 3 continuances tonight. But, there was the opportunity in August, but I'm looking at the petitions that are on August, and I think that's going to be a longer meeting as well. So I'm not a big fan of special meetings, but in this particular case, I think it gives you a forum. It gives us an opportunity to tell you, train you on the standards, the statutory standards, the status of case law, and also your rules of procedure. Just go over them and remind you of those things during a 40-minute session. And the Board of Zoning Appeals has already done theirs this year. You're the only board, I think, that we haven't actually done the training for. So I was just gauging your interest in holding a special meeting for training, and when you might be available to do that.
I love the idea of having a special meeting for training. I've always felt like the 30 minutes before our meetings felt very rushed. We were never able to go through every single item. It didn't allow time for questions that if there was a particular thing that was really confusing because, it's 6:30, we've got to start the meeting. So I like the idea of having, a set aside time where if we need to take some extra time to go over something, we can do that. And also because we have had some turnover and we just need to make sure everybody's on the same page and knows what the responsibilities of the commission are.
Bill, you know how I feel. We've talked about it. I think the training's a great idea. My only concern is we know we're going to have some planned turnover. Greg and I are trying to recruit our replacements to sit on this. I think it would behoove us to get those replacements in place before we do any additional training. I don't want us to train the 7 of us and then 2 of us are leaving and meeting others on.
How close are we to having those 2 replacements?
I hope very close. I hope very close. Within I believe next month will be at least one of ours last meeting.
Okay.
We can always include prospective members into the training session as well. I mean, if you all know who it might be, we can contact them and say, look, we're having a special meeting for training at this date, and please feel free to come.
I think that's a good idea.
I like that as well. Yeah.
Is there any specific dates and times that work for everybody?
I can say
How's
I'm-
2025 look?
I'm going to be out of town August 1st to 9th, so not then.
Yeah.
But I think we're looking at a little bit farther.
So are we talking about after the next meeting, perhaps?
That's what it sounds like to me. So early September?
Is there a preference for whether we do this training in the evening like we do our meetings, or if we come in on a weekend? Is there a preference for any of that?
Bill's preference
Are
is
you
no
asking the
weekend.
staff?
I'm opening it to anyone who wants to pipe up.
I'm not available on the weekend.
I would recommend weekday evenings. Yes.
Okay. I'm just throwing it out there. Just calm down.
Why don't you send out one of those
Doodle.
doodle calendars or whatever you call them and see
Okay.
what everybody
Yeah,
says?
a doodle would be great.
I will send out a calendar and we'll try to schedule a special meeting. Now, the way it usually works, you would have to, I'll contact you and say this is the date, and then you would have to return that and say that you said the president of the plan commission has to set the special meeting.
Oh. I Didn't know I had that kind of power.
Doesn't work for you, it doesn't work.
Okay.
All right, I need to talk to you about the truck anyway. Oh, sorry. Now, the second item on the other business is the report of the administrative approvals by the planning director. I'd originally sent you one in your packet. I added another administrative approval in between sending out the packet and this meeting. And so there was on your desk a amended memorandum that showed the addition of, I think, Bubba's 33. Or it could be anyway, we got two. We had Bubba's 33. Bubba's 33 wanted to, as you heard earlier, Bubba's 33 has done some shared parking with the Lot 7 that's under construction right now on Harvest Landing. They wanted to change one of the landscape islands. And in your packet, you have the before and after sort of shots on that one, showing you the landscape island. And it's a landscape island. If it's hard to see it, but it's down here in this corner here. It just changed it. I didn't put it up there. It just changed it over so it makes it a straighter shot rather than have to do that curve there when you're connecting those two land uses. And then that was an amendment to a already approved development plan. The second one was DPR 2212, and this was a parking expansion for one of the schools. And the school has been very thorough in their design with this. They got within the administrative approval requirements of the ordinance. They went through TAC, they went through engineering, and I did administratively approve this parking lot expansion for the White Oak. And it's just replacing one of their baseball fields with a parking field. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have on those, but the ordinance does require me to, in writing, inform you of the instances where I administratively approve it of a site plan or an amendment to a site plan.
We'll give you credit for doing a great job. We'll give you credit if it doesn't work.
I'll take the blame.
I said credit, not
Do we have any committee reports? I know the BZA did not meet this
Yeah.
month.
BZA didn't meet. BZA is not going to meet next month either.
That's correct.
Town Hall?
Nothing additional to add?
Okay.
On the redevelopment committee last week, a lot of it was standard invoices for work that's already being done. We did talk about the new cameras for the police department. And really, that's the only thing significant. The rest of it's all 100 South construction, things like that, mostly invoices.
Okay. Well, before we wrap up, I just want to say thank you to staff. You have a often thankless job, and you do an awful lot of the work that makes it easy for us to make our decisions. And so I just wanted to publicly express my gratitude for having really smart people working for us.
Thank you very much.
And so if there is nothing else for the good of the order, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.